All right, everybody, welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about ciphers and encoded messages. I'm going to show you a few simple examples and one hard one that I can explain a little bit because they're still used to some degree is my understanding. So I'm only going to give you an overview of that one. That'll be at the end. You can hold on for that one. We'll talk about kind of some different ones. There's a lot of things that are actually ciphers, basically any way you can encode a message. Some are just designed to make things easier, like the Dewey Decimal System. That's really a cipher, or Morse code, a way to communicate more efficiently. In the military, on the radio, we use the phonetic alphabet, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and on and on. That's another type of cipher. So they're not all meant necessarily to encode as much as to make things easier. But a true cipher has some sort of encoding to it. Stenography was asked about last week. Just based on how it is would be a cipher, although I would advance it a little bit. I would take something like stenography and put it into one of these systems. Just understand that things like stenography are a language by definition. So if you don't alter it, it can be easy to figure out. Same thing as using a foreign language. There's also the Caesar cipher. It's one of the oldest ones among many that use. The Caesar cipher basically just moved 3 letters to the right. So if the letter was A, you would encode it with the letter D. It was very simple. Kind of a joke somebody thought up, but probably the most difficult cipher is men understanding women. They speak in code, and I suppose they think the same for us. Hopefully I should be getting the comments, should be popping up here soon, so if you have questions or comments, I can definitely post those. We'll look at a question we had that this whole show is basically on right here from Jay over on the Intel training page, which you can join for free. The link's in the show notes. There's plenty of stuff put out every day. I do audio and video podcasts, most of which are only on there that subscribers can get. Subscribe for $2 a month. Some things do become YouTube videos, although rarely. This says, interesting stuff. This was a comment on this show that I put up. He said, I know very little on this subject. Book ciphers I have seen in movies, and I believe Caesar ciphers are among the oldest, but also simplest. What would you recommend as a few good ciphers that aren't easy to decipher, but don't take too long to become proficient with? What are the most common practical applications for them in the Intel world? Well, the practical application is simply encoding messages. That's really all it is. It's a way to deliver messages, orders, and missions when it is done. A lot of it now is just computers. A lot of what SIGINT does is encoding and decoding. There's still people that are paid in the military that join to do cryptography and decode transmissions. Even if you think back to World War II with Alan Turing building the first real computer, decoding the Enigma machine, which was one of the most advanced systems. There's also even the Culper network from the Revolutionary War. They still have ciphers today and codes of people in there that was not ever decoded, to my understanding. So we'll start with a simple one that I have here on the screen. I'll be drawing for you. Now, this is basically using a tic-tac-toe board. And as you can see, we've put in all the letters all across there. And then in the last section, we have an empty space. So we'll call these 1, 2, and 3 is what they are. And then down here in this one, there's nothing. All you really do with this system is you use the shapes of the tic-tac-toe board. So if we use this shape, we know it's the upper left-hand corner. If we put 1 dot in it, or 1 symbol of some type, it's an A. If we use 2, it's a J. If we use 3, it's an S. Now, this is where it can get fun. I can put a dot here, I can put a dot here, I can put a dot right there. They all can be the letter A. So it's a way to confuse the reader or make them think you're using another system. So it's not too difficult to use. I'll erase that. So if we were going to spell out something like gray for Grayman, it would be G. We'll put the dot there, kind of missed it. R-A, and then the Y. Now, if you're wondering what we'll use this section for, what you can use this section for over here is an empty space. I'll erase this. What we could do to spell it out the way I spell Grayman for the show is I could go G, R, Screwed that up. GR. Here's the A. Here's the Y. I put this in with no dots. That could mean a space. And then we just go here, M, A, N. So if we were to respell this a different way, it still comes out the same way. I'm just putting the dots in a different place. It's still the same thing. The question is the person you are working with, do they know what you're doing? Now, if you want to up your game a little bit, oops, we got to go back to this one. If we're going to up your game a little bit, we can use a typical phone keypad, which we can manipulate. So we're using the tic-tac-toe board again. When you look at this one, what you'll see is that the tic-tac-toe board covers this area of the first 9 numbers. We can use a dash line here to represent the 0. Now what you notice is 1 is empty and each one has a letter. Now in this example, if I do this and I put 1 dot, it means the letter G. 2 dots is an H, 3 dots is an I. I can still do the same system and put dots in multiple places. And that can be our G. And we'll do the same thing. We got the R, but now it's the 3rd letter. You can see that there's 4 letters on the 7 and 4 letters on the 9. That means you have to incorporate 4 dots into your system. So if I was doing the letter S, I could do 4 dots like that. I could do whatever combination I want. Now, as simple as this seems, we can use this one here on the 0 as our space for G, R, oops, wrong symbol. There's the R with the 3 dots. The 2 has the A, and you notice some of these letters are different because this is the A, this one here is the A, whereas in the other system, that was an A, so they're still different. Then we got our Y, 2, 3, and then if I want to put a space, I can put that in, and then continue writing from there for the M to spell Grayman. Yay, so simple to do. Now, something else we can do here we can manipulate this a little bit, and these are just ideas. There's so many ways you can do this. If we only want to stick to 3 letters, we can take and shift everything. So what we can do is looking right here at the number 2, in order to allow 3 letters or less to be in every system, we can hop everything over. So what we do there is we move this over to number 1, we move 3 over to number 2, and we continue to do that so that 7 in the 7 space only has the letter S. You can do that. Then you can take the 9 right here, and we can make this our Z. So everything shifts. So right now on the normal keypad, that's a G. If we shift everything, that becomes a G. That way, that allows us to use this space right here, gives 3 letters or less. And now, why would you do this? Well, based on this system, everything we're doing when we make a shape, when we switch them, we're using up to 3 dots, right? Okay, so if you're using the 7 key and we know it's an S, S's are fairly common in our language. You could put 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots in any order, but the person who has the keypad knows no matter how many dots is there is an S, so it adds some confusion on there. So even if they try to figure it out based on the system, they could get a little confused. Now, depending on what you write and how many letters you use, they could, of course, figure it out and figure out that you shifted it, but it's a way to kind of advance that system and make it a little more challenging. The other thing you can do is we could take the number 9 area and do it the other way. We could shift it all down, meaning 9 would only have the W, and then the 0 key or our line would be our X, Y, and Z. You could do that. Or just by doing that and shifting it over, we could shift from here. We could shift the V over to give it a TU and then shift the S over. That way, standard keypad now, 4 dots is an S. Instead, 1 dot in the 8 key would be an S. 2 dots would be a T instead of 1. The U would be 3. Now, the thing is, you can do whatever you want, but whatever system you're using, somebody has to know. Now, going back to our last conversation, one of the things I talked about was different types of information, different way to send messages, encoded or not, and I talked about that system on the radio and that we could have different types of messages we're sending, whether radio or whatever, broadcasting it, and we're putting it out there and we're saying, hey, we're, say, giving a message, we're mentioning Monday, and we go to our email, we're checking Monday. That's on the previous episode. So let's say you do that. Well, when you do that, what that message could be is to tell you which version of this tic-tac-toe cipher to use, which way the numbers are shifting. You know, you could take the number 7 has a PQRS, and you can make it to where only the S moves down to the 0 space. You could take the S and the Z and put them down there. That way, you leave all the other numbers there, and you can use the 1 as your space bar or space key. You could take and you could do it with the P or the W. You could take the P, the W, the S, the Z, 1 from each category. You could put it in the 0 space for the dash, or you could put it in the 1 space for the backwards L. So it gives you a lot of variations. So it just depends on what you want to do. Now, let me go to another one here. Now, these are going to get covered relatively quickly, so I kind of expected a lot of little action questions out there. So on this one, we have 3 columns. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. These are 3 rows of 9 columns. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And then down here, we have the green, red, and blue that you can see is north to south. The same thing, 1, 2, and 3 is there for just a graphic representation. So in this situation, the number 11 is an A. It's row 1, right there, row 1, column 1. So that's pretty simple. If I give you 24, that's the letter M. Row 2, column 4 intersects at the M. So to do this, if you were going to write down a string of numbers, and remember too, this is 3 rows of 9. You could go 9 rows of 3 columns. You could grid this out however you want to. You don't have to make them the same amount. You could have 4 letters here. You could have 9 letters here. You could have 3 here, 7 here, and you could keep going down. But using this basic system, if I say 31 is an S, then we got 18 is an H, 11 twice or once A, and M is 24. You all know what I'm spelling. Then we got 15 is an E, and for finish out Shammer, we got 29. Now I have to write it that way because of the writing space on here, but you would write them out in a string of numbers just like writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, what's nice about this, if you want to put spaces in, we know there's no number 4 in this pattern. It doesn't exist. So if you know everything's a 2-digit code, and I'm spelling, say, Grayman at 117, G, and then we got what, 29, 11, and then 37. My next number can be 40 anything, but there's no row 4. I know there's no row 4, so I know that that's a space. And you don't have to use spaces. But you can create this how many ways you want. So we could have different columns. So we can go back to, say, this system here. This happens to be rows and columns. So how do we use that? same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. 1, 2, and 3. We could use this system and pick it a different way. We could say 25, that's row 2, column 5, that's an N. Followed by 31 is a G. 17 is an S. That's not spelling a word. I'm just picking ones out. 26, that's an O. You can combine the two systems. There's nothing saying you can't. Another thing you can do, if you want to get more cryptic. Again, this is all about what do people know you're using. There's a way you can tell them what you're using through one encoded message, like, yeah, I got to pick up my 2 kids on Monday. Then I know to go to that Monday email, for those who watched the previous episode, and look at the second entry. It might tell me something. It might tell me that this exact system is what I'm using for an encoded message. So we'll say that there's 3 lines of an encoded message. This line's got some data of code. I'm using this system here. Then I know that it tells me the second line is using the grid reference system of this same thing, where it's now using numbers instead of letter encoding or shapes, and I'm using that one. Then another one goes through and uses the keypad based on the phone, based on how I move the letters around, because you probably want to move them. Very basic, very simple. Yes, it is. Now, if we go back to the keypad here, something else you can do. Let's just go back to just using this system. Right now, as it's set up with the Tic-Tac-Toe board, we know 1 dot is a W, 3 dots is a Y. That's what we think we know. Another option is to do it backwards. Instead of that being an A, it's now a C. That's still going to be an E. That'll be an F. That'll be a D. We're just going in reverse direction. So the 3 no longer represents D, E, and F. Now represents F, E, and D. You want to get more creative? Only switch some of them up. Maybe 1 row or 1 column's all switched up. Maybe every other number. Maybe certain numbers you want. You know, maybe 4 is GHI, but the way I have it set up is 5 is LKJ. That's another way you can add it on and make it more challenging. And this is just with symbols and grid patterns. These are pretty simple. So yeah, pretty simple. There's more. Don't get me wrong, there's more. We're going to get a little more into the alphabet and stuff. And see basic but effective tactics. They are. These are great for people. These are great systems used with kids. Thing is, one thing David always says, you learn by teaching. And that's definitely true. There's things I did in the military that I ever actually did them. I watched them. I heard people critique them. There are certain missions. Like I never did a battle drill called Enter and Clear a Trench. But man, I could teach it. People thought I did it all the time. It's because I watched it happen. I heard people critique it. I started teaching pieces of it, and I learned how to do it and never had done it. Now, it's not recommended, but there's things like that we all do. It just depends on what they are. Basic and complex enough to simply relay without a complex key. Most ciphers that are done by hand like this, or with old encoding machines like the wheels, or like, I don't remember what it's called, but it's looks like a scroll with spinning stuff. It's on the Da Vinci Code, the way they used to do it, had the vinegar and stuff inside. Most of the systems aren't complex. It's the method of how they're used. So the tic-tac-toe boards, look at all those options. You got standard tic-tac-toe, 3 sections. We broke out the letters, and we just picked board 1, space 5. So board 1, space 5 is an E, A, B, C, D, E. The other way is we did the grid, where we used numbers and said 1, 5, so it was actually row 2 between all 3 boards, but it was the 5th column. Then we did it with the dots. Then we did it with the dots based on the keypad. Then we moved the keypad around. God knows how many different ways you can do that. that can get pretty simple. In fact, the one I mentioned, I'm not even sure I mentioned it. The other one forgot to do with this one, without doing the columns and rows that could be numbers, I missed over that one, is we could say 31, 18, 11, 24, 15, and then this is 29. So what that is it's all separated into 2-digit codes still, like this. 31 is board number 3, space number 1. That's an S. So 18 is board number 1, space number 8. We have S, H. 11 should be obvious. 24 is twice. Look at these simple words I'm spelling out. That's another way to do that one. So we have all kinds of different options just using those simple ones right there that can give you something to work with. Now, another one we can use are keyword ciphers. There's actually a specific way. It's called a keyword cipher. These all have names. I don't care what they are. I don't remember them all. On this keyword cipher, the keyword is secret, and the message we're going to send is zombie here. I want you to notice something about the word secret. It has the letter E twice. What we're doing here in the first column of plain text is we have the entire alphabet written out. If you missed it because of the way it was written, Z's right there. The second one, the cipher alphabet, which is right here, we start the alphabet with the word secret. Now you'll notice the letter E is missing. The reason why is there's obviously 26 letters in the alphabet. So your keyword, no matter what it is, if it has more than one letter in the alphabet, like secret has the letter E twice, you get rid of one of them. Typically, people get rid of the second one, but as you can already see, if you get rid of the first one, it changes things. Now, part of what makes this simple is eventually when you get down here, you notice that those are still the same no matter what, and it's because those letters aren't used. Eventually, things shift that way. The way this works is you're using the letters above it. So when you know what it is, so when you're encrypting an S, it's an A, or when you're encrypting an A, it's the letter S. When you're encrypting an F, it's the letter A. And as we can see here in Z, there's no encryption because they're the same. So that's why it works when it says zombie here, which I took these off the internet so I wouldn't have to rewrite them. So as it says, the message becomes this right here. Z is the Z is obvious. We go to the letter L, and we can see right above it is the letter O. Then we have M, which is a J. And if you look through there, you can see right here, M is a J. Then we got the letter B is an E. We have FT left. So the letter I is an F. So you got to look at how you encode and decode. Plain text means that's what we're wanting to decode to and what we're encrypting from. Encryption is what we're using to hide the message. And you can use this with any word. So if the keyword again was my name, one of these would have to disappear. And then it's a weird word at that point. Now, if we look at this again where secret is, if they'd have wrote it this way, that shifts all the letters a little bit. It shifts some of them off. So in this system, the letter B is encoded to an E. In this system, the letter B would be encoded to a C. Eventually down here, it would all come back and tie in. So it just depends. My notes. Oh, another way you can do this too There's another more advanced way to use this system. So in this system, secret has 6 letters. The keyword adjusted has 5 letters. Just depends on which ones we want to use. So we either have 5 letters or 6 letters. And you can do this in different patterns. So one way to do this is we're going to spell zombie here. So here's the Z. I'll write them down here so we know where the Z's are. Well, in using 5, for example, because in the keyword there's only 5 letters, instead of lining them up Z to Z, I can go down and to the left or down and to the right. 2 options. Probably when you're first doing this, you want to stick with one option. But what I mean by that is if I come down and then go to the right 5 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Z now becomes the U. If I want to encode the letter I, instead of it being an F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the I is now an R. The other way is just the opposite. I want to encode the letter B. In the basic example, it's an E. I can go down to the letter E and go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's still a B. Now that can confuse people when you're using the same letter. 6 is just because the keyword initially has 6 letters, so it's the same thing. It's just the person needs to know so that when they're going back through it, okay, because encoding on this, we're going down and to the left into the cipher, down and to the right. They need to know what it is because they're taking ciphered letters like this, and they're going up and to the left, or they're going up and to the right. Now, where this gets creative is when you start using bigger keywords. The keyword, official keyword cipher is one of these versions, is great because it's 7 letters, so it's longer. Nothing repeats itself. So you have 7 full letters, whereas in this one we only have 5 to work with. And then you're moving 7 spaces. Decoding up, encoding down. However you want to work it. Got to be honest with you, I thought this was going to take longer to explain. I thought more people would be asking questions, but I think you're probably all enjoying this. Now, the next one we're going to look at in a minute is going to be the one-time pad. The one-time pad is, I can't see my camera for some reason. Let's go back and look at his question. Did we answer everything? Book cipher, Caesar cipher. We did answer that. Caesar had several ciphers, but his main one went down, one to the right. I'm not sure why. It's not showing my camera now, so I'm not sure why. I hope you guys, you can't, I know you can't see me. It should come on in a second. I guess I'll just stick to the iPad till it comes on. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I have no idea why that happened. Something else I'm going to write that company about. I spent all week trying to fix the audio issue. Yeah, so those are some basic ciphers right there. Do you guys got any questions on those before I open it up to other topics and subjects? But those are simple. So you got tic-tac-toe, you got the alphabet, you develop keywords. Now, other things you can look at with the keywords. You notice we put it at the front of the alphabet. Move it to the end. Whether on the front or the back, whatever your keyword is, reverse it. Spell it backwards. The thing is, the person needs to know. You can incorporate all these systems into however you want to use them. You can find more advanced ways to, you could take this system of using keywords and moving up and down, left to right, and factor it in the tic-tac-toe board, but you'd have to have it set up in a way to know that it's going to work. It takes a lot of effort. But there's a lot of systems to use it. But yeah, no questions. We don't have as many viewers this week as last time. Guess nobody cares about ciphers. I thought this would be fun for everybody, but I guess it's not that cool. So anyway, asked about one-time pads, so I pulled this to help you understand one-time pads a little bit. I can only get partially into it. This is using the alphabet. It can be done with numbers too. Numbers can incorporate the alphabet or they incorporate other systems. Sometimes it relies on the memory of the person. Now, the thing to this one is, on all the other systems, if you're using one of those systems, however you set it up, it's a constant until you change it. On this one, it's a one-time pad. It means it changes every time. You have to know what those pads say. Okay, you're there. Thanks, NC. I'll throw that up there. Yeah, you have to know what the pad is. So let's say you have 50 pages. This can be done in a way to make those pages mean something, depending on how many codes are in them. Typically, it's going to look like a grid of some type that's going to have a lot of letters and number combinations in it. And depending on how it's done, you have to add and subtract things. Other times, it's specific to a page, like you're telling them to go to page 7. So on this one, you take the first letter in the plain text message. So in this one, it's the letter S. And then it says, suppose you're going to encipher it, it's the 19th letter of the alphabet. That's its value, 19. And you add it to the first random letter in the pad. So in the one-time pad there, it's the letter C. Its value is 3. We add those together, we get 22. We subtract 1, because that's how it's done, and we get 21. That's how it's done in this system. You can make it any number you want to subtract from. You can develop these in a way, I believe, because I never made these, but I've used them. I believe you could do it the exact opposite, where you could say instead of adding 19 and 3, you could subtract 3 from 19. Now, in the add or subtract system, let's say the first letter is a Z. Obviously, we're going to go past 26. You just start counting over from 1. So if it was 4, it would end up being C or D. It would just carry over. Now, so we get 1 as it says. Each letter is enciphered in the same message with the alphabet wrapping around to the beginning, or going the other way if you're subtracting. But you can't add or subtract. You have to know the one-time pad. It's a one-time encoding system and never repeats itself. It's one of the most effective systems in the world. So now we take the first letter of the ciphertext. That's what the guy received, was the letter U. And then the first random letter from the one-time pad, which is a C. If the number's negative, you rack around a digit. Or subtract. So since we added up here, we subtract down here. Okay? If this was going to be a subtraction, this would be an addition. So in this one, we're subtracting the first random letter C, which has a value of 3. So use what? 21? V, W, X, Y, Z. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 21. And we're going to subtract that. Yeah, subtract the first. I have a hard time. I haven't done these in a long time. This one. This is where it starts to get difficult. So I said it was what? 21. And then we're going to subtract that 3. And that's going to give us what? 17. And it should give us the 17th letter of an alphabet, which is an S. If I did that right. I'm not good at the maths. Anyway, you can see why this can become difficult. See, did I miss a direction here? Subtract the first letter from the one-time pad. The numbers, yeah, okay. Anyway, you can see why this is difficult. This is why I put this on the screen like this instead of talking through it so people could figure this out. This is not something I ever scored high in. This is not something when I took tests or did anything they even wanted me to get in singles intelligence, and they get far more advanced than this. I did some classes and training on it, and I did some one-time pads, and the system we were using I had fairly memorized, but that was a long time ago. I haven't used them in a while. So many things are done with computers now. So many things are done just with thumb drives, sticking them in, figuring it out. But This is kind of old school stuff. You can factor this into anything. You can take that email system we talked about where you have draft letters. You can incorporate this stuff. You can have, we talked about having like one ad postings. You can take systems where you could take a picture of a random car with its license plate. A little dangerous. Odds are you won't get caught. Figure out a system based on that license plate. Throw that up and have 3 car listings in 3 different cities on, say, Craigslist, and somebody sees the license plates and realizes, or something, maybe in the background there's a number on a building. Something that's used that's a number or letter system that they know is what they're looking for, and then you can have that to where it's the code, it's the message. So you could do it in a way where you list something on Craigslist and you list them in, we'll say, Santa Fe, Birmingham, and Miami. And based on the first letter of those cities, you could say it's always going to be in alphabetical order so they know to find the listing for the vehicle. So Birmingham's going to be first. They look for the vehicle listing, and in the photo, they see the license plate, or they see a picture of a vehicle in front of a store, and you can see the address, or you can see one very prominent word on their painted display, something that tells them that's their secret message, or that that's their keyword to decipher some of this stuff. You could use it with the tic-tac-toe system where you stand in front of a doorway because it's a square, and maybe you stand there and put your arm out like you're making the shape for the number 7 space on a phone keypad. And you could do something silly in the photo. There could be something obvious in the photo that shows them this is the keypad system I'm using. So you can do all those kinds of things. Anyway, the point is, yeah, I knew I got the math wrong on that. Somehow. No, on that, no. The, what it was, oh yeah, no, I read it backwards. Yeah, the 21 minus 3, 17. No, it's only minus 3. It's not minus 1. I said it wrong. So in the first one, you add them together and then subtract 1. So in the first one, we added the S and the C, which is 21 minus 1 is 20, and that's for encoding. For decoding, we had a U, which was 21, and a C, which was 3, which drops it down to 18. Yeah, I might have wrote it down wrong. That's why I told you these are difficult. I'm not an expert in it. But you can figure out a way to make it work. It must have been, I forgot one direction in there, I think is what I did. It would have been 21 minus 3 is 17 plus 1 would have been 18. Yeah, that would have been right. 21 minus 3 would have been 18. Yeah. I'm sorry, I should have rewrote those directions more completely. See, I left one direction out and then I got confused. So yeah. When you rewatch this back, go back and look at it and you can see the one missing direction that's in there. You can make it work. There's one number that's missing. One math piece and you should come up with 18, which will give you the S. Because you're supposed to add the 1. So in the first section, you add the 2 letters together, numerically subtract 1. In the bottom system, you subtract the second letter and add 1. And that would have gave us the S. That was the direction I was missing. Well, that's the thing. Like you said, no biggie, make your own rules. That's the whole point of it. You're making your own rules. And the thing is, what makes it hard is a one-time pad. You can use the exact same system on every pad, and you could make it add or subtract in any order. You just have to do the reverse on the bottom. The other thing, too, though, the part of this that makes it hard is the idea behind a one-time pad is you're never using that again. So that's burn up, it's gone. Our next pad has a series of alphabet letters on it. You need to know what's on there and what message you can make out of it. And the thing is, while I said that's as far as I'm going into it, it's because there's some of it's still used today, but some of it gets very difficult for me, as you can see. there's other steps and directions in there to make additional pads work. You can make a one-time pad, 50 pages, that are 50 separate for sure messages. They don't know what they are. But you know what these 50 possible messages are. You could send them to page number 12 so that they can encode and get that message. The other option is you can get more advanced with the directions to where one pad, one page code can be used for several messages. It's not going to be able to use infinitely or the whole alphabet, but it can be used for several different messages. They do the same thing with numbers. This is part of how number stations used to work. I figured somebody would ask me about by now, where they use numbers and use the alphabet, and then they use different encoding systems in the middle of it. So, a 3 wasn't always a C. A 3 could mean go here to do this, go here to do this. There's several steps involved. So they get more advanced. That's why I never did that kind of work, because it was a pain in the butt. But yeah, the beauty of it is you get to make your own rules. You get to do your own thing. Sorry, I screwed up the math on that and left the direction out. But if you look at it again, you can see how it would work. You can take that and make any system you want. You can incorporate all these. You just have to make sure that whoever's receiving the messages knows the system. Same thing like in that Jay's posting, he mentioned books. They do it with books where numbering systems might give them the Dewey Decimal System. Might be a message that reminds them of something or tells them a specific book. When you're using books, it has to be a very specific book. So if there's different editions, and then you use numbering systems to indicate the page, the word, and the letter. So if the code was 237659, it could be page 237, the 65th word, the 9th letter. Those become very long systems. Let's see. Do you know how the quilt patterns were used in the Underground Railroad? I do not know how they were used, but I do remember seeing that. World War II, they did stuff like that too, simple ones where they were, you can see them in movies now, where they would put different colors out of sheets or flags to let whatever side they were letting know that it was safe to come into town, or wasn't safe, there was people there. It just depend on how you want to do it. When it comes down to third world countries, wars, civil wars, things like that, there's always messages and systems people use. Some people just do simple things. I always talk about flower pots. Some people do things where they never open blinds in a certain window, or they hang their curtains a certain way. There's all kinds of options on how you can move things around to give a certain message. It just depends on what you want to do. Like, if, how many people, when's the last time you put the flag up on your mailbox and sent something out? Most people don't do that anymore. That could be a very specific message. Black petticoat hung on a clothesline. Yeah, it could be with a clothesline, the way in which you want to hang your stuff. So for those out there that are more in the prepping aspect, more of what I call the apocalyptic prepping aspect, look at life, what it would be like. Let's say it's like the movies. You're in a camp. You're out with a group of people. You're doing things like hanging clothes. Always hang them a certain way and develop a system about how you hang those clothes. Develop a system about whether or not the tent door's open. Develop a system about, there's an item you never put on the table. How many times in a movie have you seen something where, whether they beat it up in the movie or not, it's talked about that the kid knows dad never does this, he would never do this. He did it. There's something wrong, or they say something wrong. Like, there's always stuff in movies about somebody in some sort of relationship, married, parent, child, and they always call their kid a name. They never use their real name. And then they're talking to them on the phone while they're being held hostage, and they use their real name, hoping they get on it. While those work in the movies, because it's in the script, part of the reason why is they don't have a plan. They don't have a communications plan. All ciphering is a communication plan. It's just figuring out how you want to do it. But the other thing is, if you're going to use books, you want to use your own library in your house and keep that to your family who knows where your library is. A good example of it actually is, as much as there's things in the show I like, it was entertaining, but it was kind of, for accuracy, was somewhat dumb, but it was called The Unit, based on Delta. But in a later on series, a bunch of them had to go on the run, and the team sergeant had somebody give his wife a message, and she knew that it was a code, and she went and found a book based on that. She knew what book to go to. It was already pre-planned, I believe. She had the coded message. She wrote it down, and she went through the book, page, paragraph, letter, and got his message. Now, the thing was, he didn't have that book with him. Now, and he could have, in the story, found the book and done it, but more than likely, he had pre-built that system. So you can pre-build the system to where you can go through books in your house using books, and you can come up with a few messages. and figure out how to encode them. And then all you have to do is memorize the encoded phrases. And if you have 3 encoded phrases of some type, and you know number 1 is things are fine, number 2 is things are bad, number 3, I can't tell you anything, whatever it is, and you memorize those phrases or words, you just give those out to the person, and it's on them to decode it. So you don't have to sit there and encode every time you decode. You can have pre-made messages done. It's the same idea as using that email system. We had the draft folders, where in my example, I use days of the week. You could use days of the month, numerical days, weeks. You could use whatever system. I just use days of the week to make it simple. And then those were all pre-made. I only had 3 entries. You could have 50 in there if you wanted, 50 locations. Locations could be encoded. They could be encoded and look like coordinates and not be coordinates. It could be one of these keypad systems. All you have to do is memorize certain things. So like if you have 3 things and you use, say, Monday through Friday, and that's all you're using, that's 15 things to remember. And if you keep it simple, like in every situation, number 1 is this, number 2 means this, number 3 means this, then you just communicate that system. So it's however you want to do it. You encode the message and send it, or you have them pre-made, and then you give them the message. So that's how it can work with phrases. I mean, people can do it, but you're probably not going to sit there and go 3227 684 7911. Or I've seen them in movies where like, yeah, in our second bank account, there's 3,911. They're giving them some weird numbering system so they can go down. People don't really do that. I mean, I suppose you could, but it's kind of a system to figure out. But anyway, the one-time pads are difficult to use, and there's far more directions. There's far more involved. That was the simpler version. Even I screwed it up because I'm not good at math, and I missed a direction. But you can figure that out by watching it. But there's several options there for the ciphers. I would start simple. Start with the tic-tac-toe, A through Z. Practice it a few times. Add in the standard keypad method. Look at other phone keypads. Look at your cell phone now or other phones. Figure out if you want to move those letters around. Do the standard keyword cipher where it's just written underneath. And if the keyword is secret, A is an S, B is an E, C is still a C. Leave that other letter out. Practice with those. Start mixing them up a little bit. And then from there, you can figure out ways to develop your own cipher. If you're doing it for your family, what are things that are only important to you guys, only important to you? Who are people? Like, I have a grandmother with a unique name I've never heard before. That'd be a great keyword that nobody would know. I mean, you could figure it out, but it's not something common. It wasn't Bob. Is there a kid's book your kid always loved? Is there a pet or a stuffed animal with a name they've had for years that they're always going to remember their whole life? Use things like that. They would know when you're developing your own system for your own family, something that they keep close in that they want to know. That's a simple way to do it. Then all you have to do is develop the system. Remember, you can move keywords to the beginning or the end. You could put them in the middle. You could say 10 letters in, it always changes, and see how that shifts it. You could go in and take the word secret, which is 5 letters without the second E, and you could go S, A, C, B. Basically, you can put it in between every letter of the alphabet and order it that way. I don't think it'd be good, but it could work. Yes, I actually talked about this on one of my podcasts. There's ways to do it. That's something I actually learned about as part of, like, I call it trivia, but training for what we did. There's so many ways to lace your shoes for all kinds of reasons, but you can do different things in there. And the reason they did it was so when they're walking by, they could see the laces and see what the message was. If it was safe or unsafe was how it started out. From there, it moved on to other things. Sometimes that was the only way to pass the message. That was how they could do a live drop. They could turn a meet into a live drop by communicating one message to reschedule or just to say everything's good to go. Yeah, everybody memorizes green eggs and ham. Somebody rapped it once. But everybody memorizes it, so probably not the one you want to use. There's also other systems where they use series of grids like graph paper, hexagons, putting letters and numbers in there, and there's certain ways you move them about. A guy I know down here that was a chemist developed one. His hexagon one was really good, and then he knocked it down to squares because it was getting too difficult for people to use. You can mix these up, going back to FEMA when they put the X on the doors and they put their system on in disaster areas. You could do something similar, whether it's an X or another symbol. Each one of those spaces could have a different system. You could put in let's say you had something in a storage unit. You could take Tic-Tac-Toe phone system where number 7, the fourth letter is an S. You put that shape in one corner with 4 dots. They know, oh, that's the storage unit. Another one could be a 3-digit, 5-digit number. Be a, whatever. You could get advanced like that to where instead of that telling them something specific, it might tell them a location, a date, a keyword. It could tell them 4 separate pieces of information they have to go change or chase down. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It just depends on what you want to do. So yeah, options are endless. It's just however you want to do it. There's all kinds of things people do when they meet. They wear zip-up jackets, and whether or not it'll be zipped up. They're kind of cheesy, but you always see them in the movies. I'll have a red hat. Whether or not I'm wearing the red hat means this. I'll eat with my silverware this way. You can do those things. It just depends on how crazy you want to get. So we got 10 minutes left. Has anybody got any questions or comments out there or something else? Felt like it went fast. Feel better about the mask. I don't do anything on LinkedIn. I don't work. I don't plan on working, and I was getting too many job offers, some of which didn't even tell me anything. Nobody can afford to pay me for the amount of time I'm willing to work. Yeah, dead drop notifications is another thing. No matter how you send the message, encode it or not, you can be telling people whether or not the dead drop's been dropped, whether or not it's compromised. Practice that stuff. There's all kinds of ways to practice it. Get into geocaching. You want to work with dead drops. Develop some of the stuff with your kids. Some of this stuff's really simple with kids. They learn not to tell anybody. Then you can just develop a system for them to keep them safe. Whether or not something's safe, whether or not something's good, they can send you text messages and you know what they mean. Yeah, Nemo, you showed up late. That's okay. You'll get to see me not do math well, as the last one got confusing for me because I left a direction out. Any other questions out there on ciphers? There are websites out there that will cipher things for you. I wouldn't recommend using them, although they make it simple. People can get on there. There's different cipher patterns you can find. They can show you how to use things. There's endless amounts of ciphers. Some use wheels. You can actually buy encoded wheels that have like a series of spinning wheels in them. They follow some of these patterns or different ones where you basically spin it, line up letters, and, here's my cipher letter. I flip it over here to this, and then I go to this, and that's the letter I need. Some do them with numbers. Some are like tic-tac-toe boards with the ones where you have sliding tiles. You don't have to use a tic-tac-toe board. You can use any shape combination you want. You could have some fancy symbol. You could take a hexagon and connect all corners with 6 spaces. You can take, I can't explain it. I should have, I don't think I have the paper anymore, but the hexagon one, this isn't a hexagon, but it had different sides, and basically it connects to another hexagon. The pattern just grows like that. And so the short version of it was based on the encoding system, you'd know to find, say, a letter and ways you'd need to move how many shapes and in what pattern in order to find the correct decode. It's something like that, but they get more advanced. It takes really smart people that are into this, that are good at math and into puzzles, that like to do those things. Me, I keep it simple. I don't use them much anymore. I teach little ones. I started doing it in the military when we were encoding frequency books of frequencies and jump times on frequencies, because back then we didn't have the computer systems we have now, and we just had to have them all written down. They would give us freaks and check-in times and times to change, and a bunch of them, even for 24 hours. It could be several entries. It could be 20, 30 entries of checking in here, checking in this way. Here's the time to do this. Here's when we ask for this information. Here's when we're changing frequencies. And then we would encode them all down and use our own systems. We all learned the tic-tac-toe method with the phone keypad, and then I started moving letters around and stuff to make it harder on people, because guys kept trying to get the info from me, and I thought it was smarter that way. They're like, well, I want the code now. I want the frequency now, so I write it down. I'm like, no, you're supposed to come to me in 20 minutes and then load it. So I started changing them, and then they're like, this freak doesn't work. And I'm like, you didn't come to get it. Well, I looked in your book. Well, you don't know my encoding system. Well, you need to tell it to me. I'm like, sorry. Commander says no. So anyway, lots of ways to do it. Just depends on what you want to do. Oh, something else, since we're almost done, something else I had a thought of, since I tried to teach something this time instead of normally talking. I have no idea what that just happened. Since I tried to teach something instead of normally talking, we normally talk and have conversations. What I thought was, man, I'm having issues tonight. I don't even know why. If we have enough questions on shows on some days that are going back and forth between things, I can do a follow-up show when I end the first one. But I have no idea what is happening right now. Well, I don't know. We got camera issues. The show's pretty much done anyway. I'm sorry if you had more questions. Thanks for listening, and I'll see if I can get this fixed for next week.